yet, hit that like button, hit that share button, and hit subscribe. All right? Make sure you hit those buttons, because joining me now on the I Have No Sponsor hotline, he's been on the show before, and we welcome him back, Uriah Young, founder and co-host of NBA Now and Then podcast, a fantastic podcast, guys. Before he talks, if you want to get Uriah's information, I put his link tree in the description of this YouTube video. You can find all the places you can hear his podcast, starting season 3. Good morning, Uriah. How you doing today?
Phil, what's going on, man? It's a great time to be a Philly sports fan, right?
Absolutely. It is a great time. And real quick, we're going to get into season 3 of NBA Now and Then, because it's a great podcast, and you got some great episodes coming up this year. One that you want to talk about, but a couple also that I want to talk about as well when I was looking at the schedule. But we got to start with the Sixers. And it's a great time. You got the Eagles flying high. You know, the Phillies unfortunately ended their season, but there's still stuff going on there. There's a different vibe, I kind of feel like, with this Sixers team. And it didn't start initially, but in the last couple of weeks, you're starting to get this vibe that maybe there's a little bit of a culture shift with this team, a little different, energy with this team. How do you feel about that? As, like, I'm just telling people not to go into this year with any expectations and just enjoy the vibe and ride.
I think the vibes has to do with the fact that people are coming back healthy, because I guarantee you if Embiid was not going to be in the starting lineup on Wednesday night tonight and Paul George was not on the edge of returning this weekend or next week, I think the vibes would be pretty low. But obviously you have VJ Edgecombe, who I think is a difference maker. And obviously Maxey still has room for improvement, even though he's been on the all-star team and he's made statistical increases every year. But I think the vibes are high right now. But I, like you, I reserve my expectations because we know what usually happens, Phil. I don't want to bring it up. Maybe you will, but something that usually brings all Sixers fans down typically happens, I don't know, around the winter time, Christmas time. I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to ruin anybody's morning. But tonight it's going to be a great night tonight to see Embiid on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, Joel Embiid, we got a YouTube poll question, how many games will Joel Embiid play this year? I mean, no matter what, he could be in his game 68 of this season and played every game this year, and we would still fear the unknown of the future because of what it is. Does it come down to that maybe Nick Nurse and this organization have to manage him differently this year and put less expectations, maybe take the ball out of his hands a little bit more, maybe you get a few more games out of watching his minutes in those games a little bit more? Do you think they have to manage him differently?
It's a great question. And I talked to Keith Pompey, who we had on our show a few weeks ago, and he pretty much went into the idea of what you just mentioned, is for Joel Embiid to maximize his time on the court for the Sixers this season, they have to do some type of minutes restriction. Or I think Keith mentioned something related to Paul George, or no, Kawhi Leonard, when he was with the Clippers, kind of holding him back. And then as the year progressed, then they made sure he was healthy and he was able to contribute. But I have a stat for you, Phil. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
For the Sixers in Embiid's career, with him playing on the court in the regular season, they have a 65% win percentage. Can you guess what their win percentage is when Embiid does not play?
Not 65%. I can tell you that.
Hell no.
Probably like 35, 38%.
Close, 39%. So I think I bring that up because I think although the Sixers have some really great young players, particularly at the guard position, and thank goodness that these guards haven't forgotten how to shoot yet. Like let's just pray that VJ Edgecombe does not try to modify his shooting tactics or his shooting style. But I think it comes down to Joel Embiid's health, because as it has been shown through history, when he plays, they're a lot better defensively and offensively. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that.
We'll get back to VJ Edgecombe in a minute, because I think VJ Edgecombe's a perfect segue to your podcast, comparing players. And we want to get those comparisons in. But we got some questions coming in. You mentioned Paul George's name, and that's only the second time. We've been doing 30 minutes of Sixers talk. His name's only been dropped twice because I'm ignoring Paul George's part.
Right,
Steven asks you, Uriah, is Paul George serious about playing basketball? Spent too much time off the court with injuries. Is his passion gone? Is he too focused on his post-career goals? And he puts in podcasting. I don't think it's just podcasting, but I get the vibe that Steve's trying to drop with this question. where do you think Paul George is as a basketball player right now?
Here's what I know. I know that the only person who knows that is Paul George. And that reality probably won't come out until he publishes some type of book 5-10 years from now. I mean, it's all about the proof of him getting on the floor. When he gets on the floor, will he find a way to fit within Nick Nurse's system? Will he be unselfish with the basketball, knowing that Joel Embiid is the number one option, knowing that Tyrese Maxey is an all-star who is continuing to ascend? And then you got these young guys like Jared McCain, who I love. I mean, I love Jared McCain, and I cannot wait to see him on the court. I think he's the point guard of the future for the Sixers.
Wow.
So I think Paul George as a competitor, and the one thing we did do a comparison of Paul George, and he did not come out of a big school. He was not highly recruited. So he has seen his level of improvement through the league from the lowest of the lowest levels, because he was not a highly recruited college student coming out of college. So I think as a competitor, I think he has it in him. I do think he wants to win a championship because these players know that they'll be judged, that their legacy hinges on that. But I just think it's we just got to wait and see when he gets on the court.
Do you think that there's any like you see when we get on the court, but what about the health? I mean, obviously 2 years ago he played, I think it was like 70 games before he came to the Sixers. Yep. But over the last 5 or 6 years, he's missed a lot of time. Should we be considering him in the same conversation as Embiid, where what we get out of him is what we get out of him? Be cautious with him, because again, if you want this Sixers team to have any success in the postseason, you need a healthy Joel Embiid, and you still do need a healthy Paul George for this team to have any real, even though I have no expectations, you need him to be healthy for those expectations.
Yeah, unfortunately, they've had some really rough injuries. Fluke injuries, freakish injuries, Embiid and Paul George. I think you're going to get from them what their bodies can maintain throughout the season. It's a long, grueling season. I hear the Sixers have, crazy back-to-backs in their schedule. I doubt that they'll be playing in those. But I think health is paramount. And when I talked to Keith Pompey a couple of weeks ago, he brought up the fact that it's unfortunate, particularly in Embiid, some of the fluke injuries, whether it's getting smacked in the face by the shoulder, ironically, the shoulder of Markelle Fultz. And then last season against Golden State, a guy dives after the ball, but lands directly on Embiid's knee. So a lot of these injuries are kind of flukish, wrong place, wrong time. But one thing I will say, Phil, I watched the preseason games, or at least the game that Embiid played in. I'm not optimistic, because he still thinks he's a guard. He still tries to drive the lane and tries to, maneuver through traffic, which is a recipe for disaster. I floated this idea 2 years ago. I said, turn Joel Embiid into Brook Lopez. It will extend his career. He's already a good shooter, so why not have Embiid, hang out at the 3-point line? I mean, you post him up every now and then, but the less he drives the lane and has reckless abandonment trying to get to the basket, the healthier he'll be, I think.
Supposedly the background behind you looks a lot more professional than my background. Anyway,
you got all Phillies. I got all like basketball. So we balance each other out.
People think because I don't talk a lot of baseball that baseball is not my number one sport, but baseball is always my pride and joy. You mentioned Jared McCain coming back here and how you think he's the point guard of the future of this team. Yeah. I want you to dive into what do you mean by that? Because obviously Tyrese Maxey, is the point. I mean, he's the main guy on this team. Right. Is that because you think Tyrese Maxey should be off the ball and Jared McCain, or what? I have expectations that I think VJ Edgecombe surpasses Jared McCain in the pecking order of this roster by the end of this season. Like, I love Jared McCain, I do.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes down to it, like 2-3 years from now, we might be looking at a Maxey Edgecombe backcourt with McCain, the first guy off the bench. Like, that's how I feel right now. It's not a knock on McCain. It's just my opinions on Edgecombe. Okay. Why do you feel that way about McCain? What leads you to believe that and take that to the next level? That comment.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there was a stretch last season where, how can I put this? McCain went on a tear as a rookie. I think he was averaging over 20 points a game. But if you really analyze his game, Phil, he can score on all three levels. And on top of that, he is, I would say, an underrated distributor. I think he makes good decisions with the basketball when he gets in the paint. Not that Maxey does not, but I think Maxey's natural tendency is kind of like Iverson. Iverson was a scorer. Iverson could pass, but he was much more effective as a scorer for that Sixers team when he played. And I think that's what Maxey is. Maxey he's a sniper. He's a scorer. Now, his 3-point numbers have dipped. A couple years ago, he was 43%. Last season, he was 33. And we know that James Harden's absence impacted the spacing and his ability to get more quality shots. But I say, and you know, hopefully I can be proven right, I get Steph Curry vibes from Jared McCain.
That's a big one. Somebody just said, is McCain Jamal Crawford?
I get Steph Curry vibes. I just I don't know why. It's the shooting. It's he's comfortable in his own skin. He can do so much with the basketball. So, you know, for Philly fans, take that and run with it if you want.
No, I'll accept that. How you're feeling about Nick Nurse coming into the season, knowing that last year, I mean, at the end of last year, I mean, I was shocked that he and Daryl Morey got brought back. It almost felt like Nick Nurse wanted to get fired at the end of last season just because the vibe was so off with this team. Do you think Nick Nurse is prepared to make the changes to his, you know, to the team, to the system, to his coaching style to get this team? Because he's got to make change for this team to succeed.
Nick Nurse is a phenomenal coach. He started out overseas, and he obviously got a starting or coaching position in Toronto, won a championship. And I remember I was covering for Philly Sports Network. I would go to the Delaware Bluecoats games, and the system, the Sixers Bluecoats were playing the Toronto, I think it's 905s, and those minor league NBA players, they played the same style as the Raptors play. All these tall point forwards or wing players who can shoot the three, they can defend all 5 positions or 4 positions. Well, that was Toronto. That was the roster that Nick Nurse had 4 or 5 years ago. The Sixers have a very different roster. And I think Nick Nurse, I mean, the conundrum is A, healthy players, and B, how do you get all these players with unique skill sets to blend together? It's going to be tricky. I think he's a great coach, but I think it's all about the roster and how they fit.
All right. What about the rest of this roster? We right before you joined us, we were talking about Kelly Oubre, you know, probably being used incorrectly as a starter versus a bench guy. You know, I'm looking at the roster. Obviously, McCain, George, and Watford are out to start the year. Justin Edwards is going to have an advanced role early on. Quentin Grimes and all the drama is finally at the last second back. You got the old grizzled vets at the back end, and Gordon and Lowry. Do you think the roster around these guys is good enough to complement the names we're talking about here?
Absolutely. I think the name that I don't think you mentioned was Adam Bona.
I did not mention Bona's name, no.
Look, 6'10", 235, 1 year out of UCLA. And I think it's not that I'm a big NBA 2K fan. I don't really play video games like that. But according to the video game, Adam Bona is the second best shot blocker in the NBA. Last time I checked. So I like him playing significant minutes, either backing up Joel or playing power forward. Kelly Oubre is who he's always been, going back to his days with the Washington Wizards. As far as Edwards, I like Edwards' game. He was a big surprise to a lot of people last season. And I'd say Grimes, you know, I think he's a great guard. He's a great shooter. He's lights out. So I do think they have the talent that surrounds Joel Embiid. The question is will Joel Embiid's health hold up?
I mean, so without him, I guess the question at the big with Bona and I guess Drummond to an extent is, you know, say Joel Embiid stays healthy the whole year. You know, it's not going to happen. But say he does.
82 games? 82
No. He stays healthy because they play him only in 55 or 58 games. Right. Those other 20, we said it, 39% of the time they lose when Joel Embiid's not out there. Is Bona good enough with Andre Drummond? Because that's always been the question. Who the number 2 guy is, not backing up Joel, but taking over for Joel when Joel's not out there. And that's where I don't see, if Joel misses 30 games this year, that's 30 games that we're going to lose 20 of, at least. You know what I mean? So that's my concern. My concern isn't who's playing the 12 minutes he doesn't play. My game is who's playing the 35 minutes when he doesn't play.
Yeah, I think it's Bona. The ball's in Bona's court, in my opinion. He's young. He's an amazing lob threat. He's a great rim protector. And you could just tell that he's hungry, right? Kind of flashes of Paul Reed a little bit before Paul Reed got his contract. But Drummond is, I mean, he is who he is, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we'll see if he still has the motor. He's into his 13th year, I believe, out of UConn. So, yeah, the bottom line is when Embiid doesn't play, it doesn't matter who they're going to bring in. They're going to struggle.
Yeah. So last question before we transition to your podcast here. Obviously, a lot of Sixers fans here see the Bob Myers news, and I was shocked that Morey and Nurse were brought back. Is this – I'm going to change Steven's question here a little bit. Is this Morey and Nurse's last shot, and then Bob Myers comes in, or Josh Harris and Bob Myers bring somebody else in? Or is this still going to be a several-year project with these guys in charge of this team?
What I know is Josh Harris is, I think, was a CEO of or the owner of Apollo Management. And what they do is they build up failing companies and then sell at the highest price. Yeah. So when you bring in someone like Bob Myers, who has tremendous experience, championship experience, I think the writing's on the wall. I think it's do or die, now or never. Mm-hmm. And that's for not just ownership, but certain players, you know, like Embiid. Is he going to be here? Like he's, I guess, untradeable when you kind of think about it with his health and his contract. But I've seen things. I mean, look, Luka Doncic got traded last year. So and nothing's off the table when you think about the NBA. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. So you obviously are the co-founder and host of NBA Now and Then. Fantastic podcast. You're entering your third season of doing this, where you're comparing players from the present day to the past. So we're going to use VJ Edgecombe, who we haven't talked about in this show much. Some people in the chat love the potential there. Some don't. Some wanted Ace Bailey. Some didn't. Whatever. So we've talked over the last couple days about VJ Edgecombe and comparing him to a young Jimmy Butler. And I'm not sure I see 100%. I see a combination of some of Jimmy Butler's traits. Someone else said, how about Butler? If you molded Butler and Andre Iguodala in together, that maybe that's a VJ Edgecombe. Where do you see VJ Edgecombe's comparison from the past for us to draw what his potential could be early in his career and also big picture?
Well, I think Philly fans might like this one. If you grew up during the times of Temple and Villanova, there are a couple players that make me think of Edgecombe. One is Eddie Jones, smooth, elite defender, reliable spot-up shooter. I think he might have a little more in his bag than Eddie Jones in terms of his dribbling ability. Also, I think Kerry Kittles might be a nice comparison. But as far as explosiveness,
Kittles is more of a three-point shooter, wasn't he?
Yeah. But Edgecombe, he's not afraid. He's not afraid. He'll pull up in anybody's face. We saw it in the preseason. So the kid, he belongs. I think the mentality of going from college to the pros, you got the summer league, you got preseason, and if there's any flashes of trepidation, it's like it's going to show in that span. But the kid plays like he belongs. But the last comparison I would say, Phil, Latrell Sprewell. If you saw Sprewell play, the guy was a monster. Braids, bald head, Golden State, Knicks, doesn't matter. Latrell Sprewell, I think, would be a nice comparison for VJ Edgecombe.
I don't want to say I was a Knicks fan because I'm not a Knicks fan. I've never rooted for the Knicks. But when Latrell went to the Knicks and with Allen Houston was his running mate there, I really thought those two combined were going to make the Knicks, you know. I thought they were going to do a lot better than they did that duo.
Well, they did make the finals. They made the finals, and they went up against Tim Duncan and David Robinson. So go figure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I've got a lot of hope. I think when people talk about the Jimmy Butler comparison, I think they're looking at young Jimmy Butler, but they're also looking at the fact that VJ's 19 years old, and he carries himself like a professional already. Like,
absolutely,
I'm not scared about him starting tonight or starting his first game as a rookie. You know, Nick Nurse in the past has been very cautious with rookies, you know, like easing them in. Like, it doesn't scare me that he's going to go out there and start and probably play 30 minutes tonight. And it doesn't worry me at all because of the maturity level.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, as long as he does not choke anybody out like Latrell Sprewell. Absolutely.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we don't want personality, Latrell. We want on
leave
the court.
Leave that.
Leave that at the door there. All right, so obviously I'm looking at you had your season 3 debuted of NBA Now and Then. I think it was 3 days ago. With your Victor Wembanyama versus Wilt Chamberlain comparison. Guys, again, his podcast are all his places. They're linked down below if you guys want to check it out and find where you can find his stuff. But tell us a little bit about that first episode, Victor Wembanyama, Wilt Chamberlain. What do you see in Victor that leads you to believe that Wilt Chamberlain is the comparison?
Well, it's all about impact, right? You think about the time period when Wilt Chamberlain came into the NBA. First, he was on the Harlem Globetrotters, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one in the world, let alone the realm of basketball, had ever seen a guy at 7'1" do what Wilt Chamberlain did. The speed, the athleticism, the skill. And you fast forward now, right? Like a time machine into the present, and you have Victor Wembanyama, who, and this is not my words, and we picked this comp months ago, but just the other day, I think it was Carmelo Anthony said what I'm going to say, which is the NBA today has never seen anything ever like Victor Wembanyama. Not Bol, not George Muresan or Yao Ming or any of those 7'4" and up guys, but what he can do with the basketball and his mentality, Phil. Victor Wembanyama was hanging out with NASA astronauts and Buddhist monks, right? Training with those guys, like getting into a mental state, because right now at his young age, he has made up his mind that he wants to be the best player. And Wilt Chamberlain was the same way. He had this way about him that he knew he could dominate, and he would actually hold back against certain guys. Like in the 1970 finals, he held back against Willis Reed because Willis Reed was hurt. He didn't want to be made out to be the bad guy. Wembanyama is different, though. I think Wembanyama is out for blood, and NBA centers better watch out.
Yeah, dude, he's really special watching him play. Your next episode of the one, you wanted me to make sure I definitely brought this up. It comes out in a couple days. It's your Shaq versus Moses Malone comparison. Obviously, Moses Malone, great comparison, segue, because we're talking Sixers. Also, your friend, one of your new co-hosts, wrote a book on Moses Malone. We're working on a date for him to come on this show in a couple weeks here. But talk about that comparison, Shaq versus Moses, because that's not, you're typically going current players versus previous. You're looking at two previous players in that comparison there. What made you draw those parallel lines?
Thank you for asking that. So with NBA Now and Then, we compare past and present players. We look at their statistics, their background, their accolades, and we look at their teammates. And we don't necessarily do comparisons for superiority, right? Like, oh, this player is better than this player. Sometimes, Phil, it's fun just to see which players mirror each other in terms of their game or their careers. And what we do is we have a special segment, exclusive content on Patreon, and obviously Apple has its own subscription service. But Shaq and Moses. Shaq is Shaq. Shaq is this effervescent business mogul, NBA center icon that pretty much dominated everyone on the floor whenever he played. Well, a lot of people don't give enough credit or, I think, conversation to Moses Malone, because in the 70s, not only was he the first player to jump from high school to the professional ranks, but he had multiple MVPs. He won a championship with the Sixers, and he was probably the best rebounder for an entire decade. And we're going up against guys like Nate Thurmond or Wes Unseld. Moses was that dude. And we felt as though when we compare stars in our Legends of the Game episode, we thought, let's take Shaq and let's compare him to Moses, because Moses is in the conversation, or should be in the conversation, as one of the best centers in the history of this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's great. Moses prime. I mean, I was born in 1980. So Moses prime, it was a little before my time. So I know the highlights. I know the stories and stuff like that. But obviously I grew up as knowing basketball under Shaq. So I love hearing that comparison there. And that drops on the 26th, I believe, that episode, right?
This Sunday. Check it out.
Moses Malone was very transcendent of a player, is what Nooms is saying. And I can see that. I mean, I think that's what put us over the top to win our, last NBA championship. Oh my God, it was so long ago.
Yeah.
I was going through your list of comparisons that you got on your schedule, and I got two other ones I want to talk about. But first, before we do that, I love that you're doing a Drew Holiday episode on April 5th. Drew Holiday, you're comparing him to Gary Payton, another player I loved growing up watching as a kid, Gary Payton. I don't think Drew Holiday gets talked about enough on how good of a basketball player he has been for such a long time now in the NBA. He's bounced around from multiple teams. He's won championships. He's won awards. Like, he's a damn good basketball player. But when you ask people, talk to me about your top guards in the league, I bet you nobody would name him even in their top 10 or 15 guards in the league. And he doesn't get that respect. And I love that you're going to give him respect by comparing him to another great guard in Gary Payton.
Yeah, I think Drew Holiday, I think he does not get enough love. I think his situation, being a guy next to the guy, whether it's Milwaukee and Giannis or Tatum in Boston, wherever he's gone, he's been a contributor. He's helped win wherever he went. The whole Pelicans time period, I mean, that was a crazy cluster, you know what. But anyway, I think Drew Holiday, look, he can do everything with the basketball. He can finish left. He can finish right. He can shoot. He can pass. He can dribble. I think his handles are sneaky, outstanding. Like people don't give him enough credit. And Gary Payton, another defensive guard who could also score, a little bit of a different personality type. But at the same time, it's all about the play on the court. And we're looking at two players that I think defensively were top 2 or 3 whenever they played.
You're doing a show, and I love this because we've done this show on this show. We've done this topic many of times over the years because I think it's such a fun topic. The what if. I've literally done it. I use the Marvel what if graphic for it every time. Yeah. What if? Can you give me one or two? And you're doing that one on, I wrote this down, March 29th, because I love the what if scenarios. I love thinking about alternative worlds and realities of things happening. Give me a little glimpse on one or two what ifs you might talk about on that episode, because I've already circled that on my calendar, so must listen to.
I appreciate that. Yeah, circle all of them, man.
Yeah, we'll circle them all, but yeah. So but I love diving into what ifs in sports, especially in Philly. Like we had this, like we went from Drew to Michael Carter-Williams. What if we didn't do that? What if we never traded Drew? What would have the result have been for the Sixers? Would the process have ever even started? You know what I mean? So we talk about with the Eagles drafting Justin Jefferson instead of Reagor. What would the rest of the story have been told for the Eagles? Like, there's so many what ifs there that I love diving into. So what's your goal with that episode?
Sure. So we did do a what if episode a few months ago. You can definitely check that out on our website. But the one episode we did what if Kobe Bryant was played for the Charlotte Hornets? What if he was never traded for Vlade Divac? It's like, would his career have been the same? Would he have won as many championships? I think that's a legit question. We also did what if it's escaping me now. What if Derrick Rose never got injured? Here's a guy who was an MVP, youngest MVP in history, blows his knee out, ironically, against the Sixers in the playoffs, and never is the same player again. Len Bias. What if Len Bias does not OD on cocaine in the mid-'80s at a time period where the Boston Celtics were at the pinnacle of their legacy, right? Of their run for championships. So that was in previous episodes. One what if that I can answer that's coming up is, actually there's two. One is Sixers related. One is, what if Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury had stuck together? I think because it's Minnesota, that market gets overlooked. But the big ticket, Stephon Marbury, dynamic players, egos obviously in the way, like Shaq and Penny. But what if those two had worked out? Would they have won a championship? Last one, and we're definitely going to include this. What if Ben Simmons did not forget how to shoot? Or what if Ben Simmons had, I don't know, hired a different shooting coach? Or what if Ben Simmons had been drafted to another team where the coach was not friends with his dad? I think the Ben Simmons dilemma, or the Ben Simmons situation, to me, when it hits 30 for 30, when they do a documentary on him, it is going to be unbelievable, the stuff that comes out.
I absolutely agree with you on that, because there is, I remember when Ben Simmons early in his career, constantly on podcasts before the morning show, constantly defending that there's the talent there. We just got to find a way to unlock it. I always wonder, what if the Sixers chose Jimmy Butler over Brett Brown? Because everyone thinks they chose Tobias Harris over Butler. No, they chose Brett Brown over Jimmy Butler. They let Jimmy Butler go because of that, and then they had to sign Tobias because they couldn't lose both of the guys they traded for.
That's
if
a good
Jimmy
one.
Butler stayed here, would that have changed Ben Simmons? Another, because he only had half a year with Ben Simmons, a whole offseason, another full year after that. You give Jimmy Butler's personality a full year plus with Ben Simmons, does it change anything? Because that's what Ben Simmons always needed, someone to hold him accountable, to push him to that next level. The athleticism was there. The skill set was there. It was the mindset that he didn't have. Could Jimmy Butler have worked his magic on Ben Simmons? That's a what if I've always thought about.
I might put, you know what, Phil, just because you put it out there, I'm going to include that in the episode. And I don't know, because Jimmy Butler is a different animal. Look what he did last night. 30 points at his age, opening up the first game of the season, right? Yeah. And Ben Simmons is somewhere in California sitting on the couch, right? You know, swimming in money, all the money that he stole from the NBA. But I think that's a good question. I think if that quadruple bounce doesn't go in after the travel, yes, Kawhi Leonard traveled. I will always bring that up. He traveled and then some. I think the Sixers win that game in overtime. I think the Sixers win the championship that year with Jimmy Butler. Yeah.
What if Robert Covington could finish up? I don't think we need an episode. I was a big Robert Covington fan, Nooms. I really was.
So, Nooms, I do want to say, Nooms, what if Johnny Dawkins didn't get hurt in 91? Johnny Dawkins
that might have been a comment up here somewhere.
Yeah, I just want to shout him out because I was watching the Sixers then, and I tell you, Johnny Dawkins was a hell of a player, and he always had bad knees, even in the 80s. But I think going against Jordan, I don't think he could have been an all-star. Johnny Dawkins, that wouldn't have made a difference against the Jordan Bulls.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he also agrees that he did absolutely. What if Sixers signed a reliable bench player instead of Lowry? Oh my God! Let's hope we don't. I hope we don't see too much of those two guys, Steven, this year. I really do.
The good vets. They help the locker room. That's what they're there for.
You know, same thing. Garrett Stubbs. You need the vibes in the locker room, right?
Yeah.
That's what Brandon Graham's coming back to the Eagles for, because you need that vet in the locker room. All right, so let's wrap this up here. Again, guys, this is Uriah Young, founder, NBA Now and Then podcast. Linktree is down below in the description. Make sure wherever you listen to your podcast, guys, you check it out. They do a great job. And we got another guest from his podcast crew coming up in. We're working on the Eagles bye week to bring him on here. We're still working that out. But it is Sixers opening night tonight. Let's wrap this whole interview up, this whole segment up with your final thoughts on the Sixers entering this season. Do you agree? No expectations. Let's just enjoy the ride, or do you want to put an expectation on this team?
Do I want to put an expectation? I absolutely do, but I absolutely will not, just because I've invested too much money and time and just emotions. You know, I've been watching the Sixers since 1983. That's when I fell in love with basketball. And I've seen the highs, I've seen the lows, disappointments during the Iverson years. Obviously, the process did not work. Didn't work.
I actually disagree with you on that. The process.
They traded away Drew Holiday, and anyway, that's for another conversation.
I want to say, because the process wasn't about a championship. The process was about acquiring assets to acquire superstar players. So when they traded for Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris, that was the end of the process. It worked. They got what they wanted. And then they rebooted the process and got James Harden. So the process worked 2 times. It's just the process was never about the end goal. The process was getting to the point to get to the end goal.
Okay, the way you explain that.
That's how I always evaluate the process.
I like the way you explained it, but I disagree. I think you never lose on purpose, because you alienate.
I agree. I agree with that.
I went 3 years without watching the Sixers. It hurt my heart, because I'm not going to waste 3 hours of my life to watch poor quality when I know it's there deliberately. So I agree to disagree, but I think I don't have expectations because of Embiid's health. But I do have expectations that the young players, Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, VG Edgecombe, even Justin Edwards, I think these young guys are going to continue to grow. And it'll be interesting, because you can't sign all these guys, a year from now, 2 years. But I think it's going to be a fun season, and I am optimistic. I will say that.
Optimistic is a good way to put it. Do you think – so the poll question on YouTube, if you haven't voted, guys, please vote. How many games will Joel Embiid play? Right now, these are the options and where the percentages are. 58 or more has got 20% of the vote. 47 to 58 games is winning at 45%. 35 to 46 has got 15%. And under 25 has also got 20%. So you kind of get a vibe that most people think it's 47 to 58. But you got the same amount of people think he's going to play 60 or more games as under 35. Where do you think Joel Embiid will fall in that line there?
I think he'll play around 50 to 60 games. I hope so. I hope so, because anything less than that.
You sound so dejected answering that.
Look at his knee. Like, he just
I know.
And Phil, I said this earlier in your show, he has not changed how he plays. The way he plays, driving the lane and trying to get, foul. I don't know if he's trying to get fouled, but he's not changed his game. If he changed his game, and maybe he'll reveal that tonight, but unless he changes his game and becomes more of a Brook Lopez type player, he will not see 50 games, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, at some point he's got to consider post-playing career, and if he gets hurt again, how many more times he could do this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to walk away from the money, but you know, you got to think that at some point he's got to think long-term life than just the next couple of years, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Sixers make the playoffs this year?
If Embiid plays 50 to 60 games, yes, I think they make the playoffs.
All right. Guys, again, Uriah Young right here, guys. Make sure you check him out. NBA Now and Then podcast. Uriah, thank you very much for coming on today. I greatly appreciate it.
All right. Can I just do one more plug, Phil?
Absolutely. Don't. Dude, I got 30 more minutes to go. You could go as long as you want.
If that's the case, some of your followers in the chat made some good points about the Golden State Warriors didn't need to tank. Neither did the Milwaukee Bucks. Neither did the Miami Heat. Neither did the Denver Nuggets. These teams didn't need to tank, and they ended up doing, getting to the finals, right? But anyway, I want to plug this real quick because I do have to go to. For all the Sixers fans out there, we have comparisons going back decades. We compared in season 1 Joel Embiid to Hakeem Olajuwon. You definitely want to check that episode out. Tyrese Maxey to John Wall. We did that comparison last year. We even did Phil Dikembe Mutombo and Rudy Gobert. Did I say Rudy Gobert? Rudy Gobert. Yeah, they're the same player, believe it or not. PG, Paul George, we compared to Tracy McGrady last season. And our most popular episode, Phil, to date, is our Allen Iverson and James Harden comparison. So if you guys want to break from the podcast where it's opinions, I mean, Phil, I love your show. I love it's engaging. I love your show. But if people need a break from that and you just want to hear guys bring back the old days of 80s, 90s hoops, comparing it in a non-toxic way to the players of today, check out our podcast. We have something for everybody. We have inspirational stuff. We go through the background, like players who you thought were always confident, struggled in the beginning, like Paul Pierce, didn't even think he deserved to be on the team, but because of a situation, he went in during a blowout and gained all this confidence. We compared Paul Pierce to Jason Tatum. Jamal Murray, his dad used to make him do these drills blindfolded, right? I think he would shoot blindfolded free throws. Jason Tatum ended up pretty much hating his dad when he was a kid because he was being pushed so hard. But all these players, the stars that you love and you see all the highlights, we go behind the scenes and we give you some of the things that elevated them to greatness going back to high school, college, and obviously the pros. So check us out. Season 3, NBA Now and Then.
The background stories definitely get me all the time because I do love learning the backgrounds of players, what makes them, what fuels them, what makes them tick and stuff like that. So it is great. I can't say I listen to everyone, but I make sure I circle 5, 6, 7 of them every season, and the ones I love, I do enjoy it. It's great stuff. And again, like I said, can't wait for the Drew Holiday episode. I'm so hyped for the Drew Holiday episode because it's just great to hear love for that man. Uriah, thank you very much for your time this morning. Can't wait to do it again with you.
Have a great day and go Sixers.
That's right. Thanks a lot.
All right.
All right, guys. That was Uriah Young on the I Have No